Hosted in conjunction with Chris Media, the CEO interview series allows investors to hear directly from the CEOs leading the companies featured on Wholesale Investor. Enjoy the interview and reach out via the details in the description.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the CEO interview series. Today, I'm joined by Zakaria Bouguettaya, co-founder of QPay. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Rhythm.
Brilliant. Now, Zakaria, let us start with something quite simple for our audience. So can you give us like an elevator pitch about QPay? What is the value that you bring to the market?
No, that's a great question. So QPay, we work with universities around the world. So actually 4 countries, Australia, UK, Canada, and New Zealand. We basically help measure and improve student engagement through 7 core modules. We help students from things like financial management all the way to course reviews and everything in between. So we really consider ourselves an all-in-one campus app. Yeah, that's, I guess, in one sentence what we do.
Amazing. Now let us dive deeper into what you saw in the market as a problem. Like education itself, like it is a very big component of a person's life. So very shortly after they're born, they get into schooling and education. But what exactly motivated you to come up with this venture?
That's a great question. I think a lot of stuff, and especially in startups, you find that it's a progression. It's not. I think where we are today is definitely not where we first started out. We actually started out as a bill splitting app, if you could believe it. So ever since then, you kind of increment and you kind of find new problems you can solve, and along the way, you kind of start to build a bit of a company. So for us, one of the things that we really wanted to do from day zero was improving financial literacy. And I know it sounds a bit different than what we do today, but it's a core component of what it means to be a student. And kind of, if you think about a student, it's a time where a lot changes in your life. It's usually the first time you're away from home, first time where you have real responsibilities, first time you get your job, first time you have your real paycheck. So you kind of have all these like things happening in a student's life. And amongst all of that, you're also trying to set yourself up for the rest of your life. What you do at university usually is what sets you up for what you do for the, remainder of your professional career. And so, making sure that there's a way where you can not only, I guess, track those progression points and intersection points, but at the same time, improve it, I think is obviously a core tenet of university, right? They're not there just to teach people. And I think to be able to teach someone effectively, you have to encompass a lot more than just that. So I think, for when we started, again, it started with a very specific purpose, but in solving that particular problem, we realized we had to solve other problems. And that's kind of where we are today and why we're, I guess, a bit of a platform instead of just a single purpose startup.
Amazing. Well, that was a very great explanation into going into this, inception of the venture. Now, let us dive deeper into, so you have been in the market for a while. So can you talk to us about what is the traction been, like the feedback from the market about your product so far?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think traction is really where we shine a bit. So, in Australia, we have over 500,000 students. That's just under 50% of all students in Australia. We also have around 100,000 students in the UK. So there's a lot of students using our platform. We actually have a presence on more than 110 campuses around the world. So, students really around the world, I guess, resonate with what we do. And I think a lot of the time when you work with students, and when one of our core theses, I guess, is around this idea of passive convenience. It sounds a bit fluffy, I guess, for lack of a better word. But if you kind of drill down on what it means, to be able to deliver passive convenience, it's really like the pointy end of the stick. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen before you could do that. So I'll give you an example. We have a rewards card program, which actually sits on a MasterCard. And the idea, there is obviously you can give people or students particularly cashback rewards for purchases that they make. To be able to do that, you obviously need them to sign up to a card program, which from a legal perspective, you need to do KYC. So, getting the driver's license, name, date of birth. So there's that kind of hurdle. Then they also have to have the physical card or a digital card added to their, Google or Apple Pay. They have to know to pull it out at the point of purchase, and then they have to be able to get the cash back. So if you think about all those steps, I think one of the things that's complex in that is each one of these is a hurdle that you have to surmount. And a lot of companies deal with that with just kind of sheer marketing or incentivizing it quite heavily, so giving a lot of deals. With QPay, an idea of, I guess, this passive convenience, you do it on the way to doing something else. So for example, as a student, typically students will sign up to become a member of a club or a society. So you can imagine, you're a brand new student, you're say studying law. Typically one of the things they'll do early in the year is they'll join the law society. Or let's say you love Kanye West, you'll join the Kanye West Appreciation Society. On average, they'll join around 4 clubs a year. And one of the reasons that they do that, other than to meet like-minded people, is they get access to specialized discounts. So if you join the law society, you get like a sticker on your student card, and you can flash it at the point of sale. With QPay, what we did to be able to distribute this QPay card was we, instead of getting a sticker on your student card and flashing at the point of sale, you instead get a MasterCard. And so the premise there, in terms of this passive convenience, it was on the way to you buying a membership you were going to buy anyways, but it's just a much more convenient way of doing it. And so we have all these like little intersections where we tie a lot of our services together, and that pointy end of the stick being that passive convenience, but really kind of driving that is kind of, I guess, a core part of what we do. So yeah, that's I guess in a very brief nutshell, I think our traction and where we are today.
Amazing. That all sounds brilliant. Now, there must be other solutions offering in the market, similar to your product. So can you tell me, like, what is the uniqueness about your venture? Like, how are you different from any other solutions that are available in the market?
That's a great question. I think, so it's been pretty interesting. When we first started, it was quite a fragmented market. There's obviously, companies that do bits and pieces of what we do. So for example, we do event ticketing. So if you're a university that's running a bunch of events on campus, obviously there's Eventbrite, Try Booking, there's dozens of companies doing that. We also help students, for example, review courses. Again, there's literally dozens of solutions that do that. But over the last year or so, we started seeing a kind of a large consolidation of the space. And I think it was driven largely by COVID. But universities before kind of had this half digital, half physical kind of approach to a lot of what they did. But then obviously with COVID, they kind of had this big drive to digitize almost everything, and they kind of bring it all in-house. And I think part of that digitization process meant that they really needed everything to be in the one place. So over the last year or so, we've seen a lot of companies, huge companies, kind of coming together, either merging or ones acquiring others. So I think Blackboard and Campus Groups are one of the largest that joined in the last year or so. We actually got an acquisition offer from a private equity firm that owns a majority stake in a competitor in the US as well. So there's kind of this big consolidation play. And I think that really does two things for us. And it's a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it means that once you get these universities, the contract terms are usually 3 to 5 years. So you kind of have them, and it builds a moat quite solidly. On the other hand, there's obviously a risk of lockout. So for us, it's kind of been a land grab, and that's where we really were the best positioned. I think, as I mentioned earlier, we have a presence on 110 campuses, and we use that as almost like a grounds up, a bottom up approach to acquire the universities at a top level. But really, we feel like it's, whoever gets there first will really kind of win the space. And I think the fact that there's so much venture money and so much, capital getting poured into this kind of really justifies that thinking.
Absolutely. Now, for my next question, I would love to ask you about, your team, which is fundamental to every business. So can you share a little bit about what skills do they have and what do they bring to the table, so that, when investors look at this interview, they would feel safe in the hands of your team?
No, that's a great question. I think, I know probably every company says this, but genuinely, I think we have a world-class team. I think, one of the things that makes us a bit different, and something I strongly believe in, I know that there's a big thing around remote working, and I think that is going to be a part of really any business. But one of the things that we really value, I think, is that face-to-face understanding of what it is. At the end of the day, I think one thing that's unique about our team, we actually are here in Sydney. And, in COVID, obviously, we did have a remote team, and we actually had a global remote team. But then we found that, in terms of a lot of those water cooler moments, it's very difficult to replicate those online, and it's very difficult to even measure, kind of what the improvement gains are. So I think that's one side of it. But then the other side, each one of the guys here, is obviously a part of not the company, but they've had experience either in the space itself, in the university space, or in an analogous space. So we're actually quite a dev-heavy team. I think we have a relatively small team. We only have 10 people on the team, and out of that, I think around 5 of them are developers, 2 are sales, and 1 graphic design, and then myself and Mo as one of the co-founders. But yeah, I think it's a perfect mix. I genuinely think our team kind of plays top level. And I mean, I think you touched on it earlier, and investors wanting to know that we have a great team. We've raised from some world-class investors. So, I think we've been vetted in some way by that. We've got an investment from Blackbird. We went through StartMate, which is an incubator here in Sydney. We even got all the way to Y Combinator in the US back in would have been end of 2018, early 2019. We've raised, from Steve Baxter and Naomi Simpson on Shark Tank. And we went through as well Artesian, which is another venture capital firm here in Sydney. So I think all of these kind of put it together. And I think, like you mentioned, one of the core things they look at is the team. And I think that was one area that we've always, I think been able to impress.
Brilliant. It sounds like definitely a really good investment opportunity, and I'm sure like the investors would be keen to reach out to you. Now, as a parting question, I would love to ask you about what does your outlook look like for the next 6 to 12 months? So what should we be excited to see with QPay moving forward?
I think it's a good question. I think I touched on it earlier, but this idea of kind of bringing everything under one platform and really this consolidation play. I think what we've done historically is a bit more of a bottom-up approach. We work either directly with students through our app or student organizations through our app. But really over the last year and a half, we've worked a lot more at the top level, so working with universities. And what this allows us to do, instead of kind of working on individual modules, we instead kind of roll out our entire solution across the whole campus. And so for the next year, I think we're really focusing on that top-down approach. I think, it's already yielded us great results on the 12 campuses where we have a top-down kind of contract with the university itself. We've improved graduation rates anywhere from 2 to 4%. So that's massive. And I think, I know I mentioned this in our deal room, but one thing that surprises most people is that 1 in 4 university students drop out. And if you think about that for a second, if we were a business here pitching to you and we said, hey, 1 in 4 of our customers are churning, that's not an investable business. And yet, one of the largest industries, the education industry, the university industry, has this massive attrition rate. So, again, we think that this top-down approach not only allows you to measure this a lot more accurately, but then also allows you to make improvements towards that. So for us, over the next 2 to 3 years, it's really just acquiring more universities, going to more countries in more likelihood. So the US is kind of our biggest, jewel in the crown, and something we really want to be chasing in the next year or so. And really just kind of improving our product from that bottom-up approach the way we have been for the last couple of years.
Amazing. Well, we are looking forward to keeping tabs of the journey of QPay moving forward. And congratulations on everything that you've achieved so far. And our team wishes you all the luck with your venture. For anyone who's interested to get in touch with the team at QPay, please see the details at the side of the screen and in the description. And someone will reach out to you shortly. Thank you so much again, Zakaria, for coming on for this interview and sharing your journey with QPay so far.
Thanks so much, Rhythm. I appreciate it.
Thank you.